I never thought that an ordinary trip home could turn into a real nightmare. It happened in the fall, when the nights got longer and colder. I was coming home after a long day at work, and the time was approaching midnight. I pulled onto the highway that led through the woods. The road was deserted and dark, with only the headlights of my car cutting through the gloom. My mind was spinning with thoughts of the upcoming vacation and a hot dinner. After driving a few kilometers, I noticed a car on the side of the road. It was standing with its emergency lights on. I slowed down and thought that maybe someone needed help. Pulling over next to it, I got out of the car and walked over to it. Inside was a man who looked upset and nervous. He explained that he had a flat tire and no spare. I offered to help, but he said he was just waiting for a friend who was already out with a spare tire. Back to my car, I continued on my way. After a while, in my rearview mirror, I noticed the headlights of another car that was moving very fast and approaching me. The car overtook me and braked sharply in front of me. I was forced to slow down as well. Two men got out of the car, one of whom was the man I had seen at that broken-down car. They came up to me and started yelling, accusing me of hitting their friend. I was shocked because it wasn't true. The men behaved aggressively and started banging on the hood of my car. My heart started beating faster, and I realized I had to do something. I closed the windows and locked the doors. They tried to break the windows, but they were unsuccessful. Taking my cell phone, I pretended to call a friend who works for an evacuation service. The men, realizing they were having no luck, returned to their car and drove away. I breathed a sigh of relief and decided to drive on. However, at every turn, I thought I saw the same car. At some point, I realized they were following me. Adrenaline was kicking in, and I made the decision to turn off the highway onto a country road, hoping I could pull away. My heart was pounding like a hammer. The road was getting narrower and narrower, and the tree branches were reaching for the car, as if they were trying to stop it. I turned around to see if they were still following me, and I could see that their headlights were following me relentlessly. They looked especially menacing in the dark, like the eyes of a predator stalking its prey. The country road led to an old, abandoned house that I had often seen from afar before, but had never come close to. I decided to take a chance and turned toward it. The house looked ominous: creaking shutters, broken windows, weedy yard. I turned off my headlights and held my breath, hoping I wouldn't be spotted. The pursuing car drove past without noticing me. I waited a few minutes, then got out of the car and headed toward the house, looking for a safe place to hide. Once inside, I found the house in even more disrepair than it appeared from the outside. Creaking floorboards, cobwebs, and the smell of dampness told me that no one had lived here for years. I found a small room on the first floor where I could hide and collect my thoughts. My mind was spinning with thoughts that they might have come back and found me. Suddenly, I heard the car engine rumble again outside the window. They were back. The headlights shone through the windows of the house, skimming the front of the house. I held my breath and listened. There were footsteps and voices outside. They were obviously looking for me. One of the men said loudly that he was sure I was around here somewhere. I decided I couldn't stay where I was and cautiously made my way up to the second floor, hoping to find some better hiding place. As I climbed the creaky stairs, I saw an open door to the attic. I hesitated at first, but then decided it was the only place I could hide. Climbing up into the attic, I closed the door behind me and found a dark corner where I could hide. Footsteps and voices got closer. Men entered the house and began to look around, room by room. I could hear them talking and laughing, clearly enjoying their position as hunters. I tried to keep quiet and lurked in my corner, hoping they wouldn't go up to the attic. The men paced the house, their footsteps echoing in the silence. I heard them opening doors, peering into rooms, moving across creaking floors. My hope that they wouldn't go up to the attic was fading fast. At one point, they stopped right under the hatch leading upstairs. One of them said they should check the attic as well. My heart beat faster again, and I felt sweat break out on my forehead. The hatch creaked as they started to open it. I looked around for cover, but the attic was practically empty. One old wooden box and a few bags of some kind of trash couldn't hide me. I huddled in a corner, trying to be as inconspicuous as possible. The voices came closer and closer. One of the men came up into the attic, shining a flashlight. The beam of light slid across the walls, the floor, the bags. I held my breath and tried not to move. He walked past me without noticing in the darkness. After looking around the attic, he shouted to the second man that no one was here. I heard them come downstairs and start searching the house again. A few minutes passed that seemed like an eternity. I didn't know what to do next. Running away was risky. Staying put was even riskier. I decided I should try to get out and hide in the woods before they came back. Descending from the attic, I crept quietly to the back door of the house. The men's footsteps could be heard at the other end of the building, and I hoped I would be able to slip out unnoticed. I opened the door and stepped outside. The cold night air hit my face, and I ran toward the woods. Branches whipped at my face, thorns clawed at my clothes, but I didn't stop. When I looked around, I saw that the house was behind me, and the men didn't seem to notice me. I ran until I felt like I couldn't go on. Stopping to catch my breath, I heard the same engine sound again. The car reappeared on the road, and the headlight light darted between the trees. They were still looking for me. I continued deeper into the forest, trying to find a place to hide until morning. The forest grew thicker and thicker, and I began to lose my bearings. At one point, I saw a small abandoned barn. It was barely visible in the darkness, but it was my only hope. I crept cautiously toward the barn, watching for any movement in the darkness. The door was ajar, and I crept inside, trying not to make too much noise. It was damp and dark inside, but the place seemed safer than the forest. I crouched in a corner, hidden behind piles of old junk and tools. It wasn't long before I heard the sounds of footsteps again. Men were making their way through the woods, their flashlights illuminating the trees. They were clearly not going to give up. Sitting in the dark, I pondered what to do next. I realized I couldn't hide for long. I had to find a way out of this nightmare. Suddenly, I heard one of the men say to go back to the road and wait for me there. They figured I should come out of the woods anyway. I lurched, listening to their footsteps moving away. I had one thought running through my head: run. When I was sure they were gone, I slipped out of the barn and moved further into the woods. I hoped I could get around them and out to the other road that led to town. The forest was dark and scary, but there was no choice. After much wandering, I finally came to a country road. It was deserted, and I didn't see a single light. I decided to follow the road, hoping that it would lead me to a settlement. I had to walk for a long time. My legs hurt, but I could not stop. After a few hours, I saw a headlight in the distance. It could be help, or it could be a new danger. I hid in the bushes by the side of the road and waited for a car to pass. It was a police car. I exhaled a sigh of relief. They didn't notice me and drove on. With the first rays of dawn, I finally reached a small village. Tired and exhausted, I knocked on the first door I could find. An elderly man opened it, and trying to keep my composure, I asked for help. He invited me inside, and I told him everything that had happened. The man listened to me and offered to rest, promising that in the morning we would figure out together what to do next. I lay down on the old couch, feeling the tension slowly leave my body. I was safe, even though I didn't know what would happen next. The important thing was that I had survived that terrible night and found shelter